How many books do you think I can balance on my head? At least 3. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. When you were 13, 14, 15 and filled with angst and rage, did you have a favorite series that got you through the day? I did. And no, it wasn't Twilight or The Hunger Games or Maze Runner. I don't know why I'm acting like I didn't read those because I totally did. But no, my favorite book series at that age was Bloody Jack. I know what you're thinking. What? I've never heard of that. Nobody has. Nobody except for myself, my bestie Evelyn, who you met, and literally one person on Instagram. Shout out to Liv. But today, I'm not here to talk about why you should read Bloody Jack. You can if you want. I think it's a little outdated and most of my viewers are probably not 12. I'm here to talk about every single thing that is really, really wrong with this series. But before I do that, don't forget to like and subscribe and ring that bell icon so you know when I upload new videos. I upload 3 times a week now. Also, before we dive into this video, I just want to let you know that I am going to be talking about subjects like rape, molestation, homophobia, death of several children, torture, and grievous bodily harm to a child. When I was about 12, I was browsing the bookstore shelves looking for the next thing to read. I had this habit back then of just picking up literally any book that looked cool and buying it and trying to read it even though I had no idea what it was about. That's how I found Bloody Jack. I looked at it and I was like, hey, pirates, I like that. Found out that this character is actually a girl, thought that was awesome, bought it, and oh boy, a many years, if not lifelong obsession was born that day. Bloody Jack is the story of a young orphan in late 1790s London who starts off living life on the streets and soon joins a Royal Navy ship under the pretense of being a boy. How does Jackie get on board the ship even though she's a girl? Well, she cuts her hair, wears boys' clothes, and convinces them that because she can read, they should hire her. And it works. The first book in the series is an intense look at what it might really be like to be a little girl disguised as a boy on a Royal Navy ship during the Napoleonic Wars. Jackie is about 11 years old. She thinks she could be younger, she could be older, she doesn't really know. It is written in first person, so we are in the head of an 11-year-old child for the entirety of this book. There are several things wrong. Let's discuss. My first major gripe with the Bloody Jack series as a whole is, who is it for? I remember when I picked this up, it was in the middle grade section of the bookstore, so marketed towards me, a 12-year-old at the time. It is from the perspective of an 11-year-old girl. Now, if you look online, it's marketed as YA, young adult, but it deals with some very heavy themes. Based on the trigger warnings I gave alone at the beginning of the video, you can get sort of a general idea of what kind of stuff is covered in this book. For the entire first act, we follow Jackie from the streets where she was doing things like selling her own teeth, talking her friends out of prostitution, attempting to convince a local scientist to pay her in advance for her dead corpse if he ever finds her on the street. We follow her from that to being hired as a ship's boy on the Dolphin, where we talk about what that life would be like. It goes okay for Jackie for a while. There's nothing too intense, although there is a lot of talk of sodomy as she and the other boys are being taught that being gay is wrong. I have this very distinct memory in my head of being about 12 years old and going up to my dad and asking him what sodomy was. And he told me. Thanks, Dad. Part of the climax of this book comes when a adult male character in the book who has been following Jackie around for quite a while does trap her and molest her and attempt to rape her, does get as far as molesting her and discovering that way that she is in fact a girl, and Jackie ends up violently murdering this person in order to keep her secret. The book is called Bloody Jack because this 11-year-old child gets the nickname Bloody Jack because she's absolutely soaked from head to toe in blood in certain scenes. Now you might be thinking, okay, that's some pretty heavy stuff, but not impossible for YA. I get that. That's not the issue here. I'm not trying to argue that this should be an adult book and not a YA book. What I'm trying to argue is that we focus on themes like that, and at the same time, for the entire second act of Bloody Jack, Jackie is wandering around sobbing because the boy she likes might not like her back. Seriously, she goes through an entire depressive episode because she can't tell Jamie that she's a girl because her secret will get out, which means she'll never get to be with Jamie. The entire first act, her biggest fear was being hanged and being too light for the rope to snap her neck and having the hangman jump down on her shoulders and break her neck. But partway through, her entire motivation switches to how to get Jamie to be gay for her, basically. Well, luckily for Jackie, Jamie has been questioning his sexuality because he also is in love with her. And thank goodness she turned out to be a girl. Very Mulan thing, I guess. And then we get to book 2, Curse of the Blue Tattoo. Jackie is done with seafaring adventure for the moment because the government has decided to ship her off to an all-girls school where she can be catty and petty, and we pit women against each other and they scratch each other's faces with their nails a lot when they're angry. Oh, but also a crazy priest is trying to kill her because he thinks she's possessed by the devil. And she gets arrested at one point and during the search, fully molested. Again. In book 3, under the Jolly Roger, Jackie is accidentally press ganged onto another ship because they think she's a boy. But when they find out she's a girl, the disgusting Captain Scroggs decides, I'm gonna rape her. But don't worry, Jackie's about 14 in this book maybe, so she's a lot more mature now. The majority of the plot of book 3 is Jackie fearing that she's going to lose her virginity to the creepy old captain and deciding which of the other midshipmen she's going to have sex with in order to lose her virginity to somebody else. In book 4, in the belly of the Bloodhound, Jackie returns to her all-girls school in Boston and they are quickly all kidnapped and put on a ship to be sold into slavery. Book 4 flips back and forth between her discussing the rape of her 15-year-old friend Katie and still having petty arguments with her worst enemy in the world, Clarissa Worthington Howe. There's also an absolutely brutal scene in this book in which Jackie is flogged with a cat o' nine tails, which is this horrible thing here. And it's written in intense detail, puts her on bed rest for a couple of days in the bottom of the slave ship, but don't worry, she still has time to be petty to the other girls. In book 5, not only is Jackie tarred and feathered, she is tortured for information by having her legs and torso burned with cigarettes. But who will she choose as her boyfriend? There are like 6 options now. Book 6. We're in France and Germany, I guess, following Napoleon, because she's a soldier now, which we'll get to in a minute. Jackie is literally shot and hanged in this book, but also joins a ballet group where, again, she just can't get along with other girls. I don't know what happened to the dust jacket for book 7. I have no idea. I never even finished book 7. It starts off with her almost marrying Jamie, finally, and then being kidnapped by the government, I think, to become a deep sea diver. I don't know. I didn't finish it. And then I didn't finish the rest of the series. There are 12 books in total, so I dipped out of the series at book 7. I've looked at, you know, the rest of the adventures. I know vaguely what happens. It's more and more just nonsense until the end when she finally fakes her death, but doesn't really. If you look at the reviews online, a lot of them are parents or just readers in general saying this book was recommended for my 10, 11, 12-year-old child. And it is way too dark. And I agree, I think the first book is phenomenal, but I was ready to read it. I was already reading darker things at that time anyways, but if I was a regular 11-year-old who picked that book up or had it bought for me, that would not be okay. I learned way too many words for different sex acts and ways to kill people. And sure, I was invested at the time on who Jackie was gonna pick. How was she gonna handle her developing body and learning what a period was? No one is ever gonna wanna marry her because she's too ugly and too stupid. Number 2 biggest problem with this series is that Jackie is 100% a Mary Sue. Now, I know we're not really supposed to use the term Mary Sue anymore because it is overused to describe female characters that are actually just talented, but generally what a Mary Sue means, it is a female character who is unusually lacking in weaknesses or flaws and is good at every single thing they do just because they're the one girl character. As much as I don't like to describe characters that way, it is Jackie, 100%. I could pull out examples from each of the books, but I'm going to focus on book 2, Curse of the Blue Tattoo. In book 1, we learned that Jackie is deathly afraid of horses because they will stomp on street children and kill them. And then she spends the rest of the book on a ship, not near horses. And in book 2, while she is around horses and takes a couple of riding lessons, she winds up at her best friend's estate where a particularly feisty, dangerous horse is being brought in to be trained for racing. Jackie, through her absolute sheer power to seduce men at the age of 13, is somehow allowed to ride this super expensive, precious, crazy horse. She rides it around the estate a couple of times, literally a couple of times, and I guess she and the horse bond. Fast forward to later at the race, this big important race where her best friend's father has bet the entire estate on this horse winning. The jockey that was supposed to ride can't anymore. Oh no, what are we gonna do? Don't worry, Jackie's gonna pretend to be him, put on his clothes, and then proceed to win the race. Like, I'm all for suspending my disbelief, but she went from being terrified of horses to riding this one horse a couple of times, this notoriously difficult, impossible to ride horse, to then beating a bunch of professionals in a really important high stakes race while convincing everyone that she is this actual jockey. Meanwhile, she's a 13-year-old girl and people have eyes. Major issue number 3. Every single male character Jackie meets literally falls in love with her. Jackie starts off the series as an actual ugly child. They say that. She is described as rat-faced multiple times in book 1. But that does not stop multiple male characters from falling in love with her while fearing that they are gay because they've got a crush on a boy. By book 2, Jackie is now officially a girl again. She's got long hair and wears dresses. In her training to become a fine lady, she attends multiple parties where boys are in love with her. Oh, and they forcibly get her drunk and try to rape her. But we'll just gloss over that part. Her best friend's brother has a big crush on her and tries to get with her. She steals her competitor Clarissa Worthington Howe's fiance. By accident, though. The kid that trains the horses also falls in love with her. What is so special about Jackie? Well, she's not like other girls. In book 3, when she's about 14 years old, as I mentioned, she ends up press ganged onto a ship where the captain does decide he is going to rape her once he finds out that she is a girl. And, yeah, I don't want to say, well, that's fair, but at least that's, you know, understandable pedophilia. I don't ever want to say that phrase again. But besides him, Jackie does enter into 2 consensual, massive age gap relationships. Primarily is Joseph Jared. His age is never explicitly stated, but he does, you know, at one point press her into a wall and kiss her and say, what does it feel like to be kissed by a real man? He is an adult man, and she's about 14. She's down. There's also Robin, who she wants to lose her virginity to so that she doesn't have to lose it to the captain at a later date. Oh, and don't forget, this whole time she's still betrothed to Jamie, who is also an adult at this point. Book 4 is surprisingly clear of men falling in love with Jackie. She does convince the crew of the slave ship through sheer charm and child sex appeal to give them like extra food and baths and stuff, and she, you know, shows the other girls how to show off their legs in order to get extra food. In book 5, there's a million people falling in love with her. I literally can't keep track anymore, but everyone's in love with her again in book 5. In book 6, we've now got members of the French military in love with her and her like spy handler because, oh, she's a spy now for the British government. Book 9 I didn't read, but we finally get a new adult captain in a sexual relationship with Jackie. This time it's a woman though, so at least we're being inclusive. Next we have the involvement of my least favorite literary trope, miscommunication trope. Miscommunication trope essentially is when a major conflict in a story is ignited because 2 characters just cannot communicate with each other. The prime example of this, again, is book 3, where Jackie has returned to the racetrack. She realizes her fiance, Jamie, is in the crowd, and she's gonna go surprise him, dressed as a boy. He doesn't know she's there, and she's so excited, and she's running up to him, but sees he is seated with another woman. Anyways, they make eye contact. She starts to cry. He says, no, Jackie, wait. She runs off because how dare he be seated with another girl. That turns out to be his cousin, by the way. But she won't let him tell her that because she runs into an alley and immediately gets press ganged and put onto a ship. Jackie is constantly misinterpreting situations and never learns from her actions. She just continues to make assumptions and do stupid shit. But I guess it furthers the plot. I don't know. My last and possibly biggest gripe, honestly, and this does tag on to the what makes Jackie so darn special, is what the hell are the British and American governments up to throughout these books? I get that Ellie Meyer wanted to showcase a lot of real historical events throughout the books by sort of weaving Jackie's storyline within. A lot of it makes sense, particularly in book 1. She's on a British Navy ship, so they are facing off with French pirates. They're facing off in real battles. Her ship in book 3 is part of the Battle of Trafalgar. This makes sense. But she's not a central, history-changing figure in those cases until we get to about book 6. Jackie is recruited by real historical figures Lord Thomas Grenville and Viscount Horatio Nelson. You've probably heard of Lord Nelson before in reference to the Napoleonic Wars. He was a huge figure. People did not get to just meet him. It was like a big deal if anyone got to meet Lord Nelson or Thomas Grenville or any of these actual British politicians that existed. But no. We need a spy to infiltrate a French ballet for some reason. And you know who's perfect for that? Known criminal Jackie Faber, who literally was arrested for piracy multiple times and is for some reason known to be a skank. We need her. So she's recruited by British politicians to become a spy in France. We also have her interacting with, I guess these are more like Easter egg nods to seafaring legend and lore. Her best friend in book 1 is named Davy Jones, captain of the Flying Dutchman. But then in book 5 or 6, we have her sailing aboard the Pequod with a kid named Ishmael, who matches the exact description of Ishmael from Moby Dick. So maybe those are just nods to those stories, and we're not actually meant to believe that Jackie met those real people. But who knows, because she's met so many other important historical figures. The series has redeeming qualities, it really does, especially book 1. Bloody Jack ignited a passion in me for stories told on the sea and has me reading things now, like Shannon Chakraborty's new book. I'm reading this because I read Bloody Jack back in the day. But it's kind of like L.A. Meyer had this really great concept for a book, wrote book 1, which is just called Bloody Jack, and then realized he had to follow it up and just kept following it up. I was this series' biggest fan. Evelyn and I, this was our favorite thing in the world, and we both bailed on it. The constant back and forth between the heavy dark scenes and the weird bubbly light will they won't they storylines just are incongruous and not interesting to read together. Also, give me any scene of Jackie learning a skill before perfecting it. Okay, I'm kind of tired of just crapping all over one of my favorite series of all times. Maybe I'll sit down and reread book 1 just to make myself feel a bit better. But thank you for joining me. I hope you learned something. What am I talking about? If you want to read this series, pick up book 1. See how you feel. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell icon so you know when I upload new videos. I upload 3 times a week.